Cool. So we're live now. I just want to thank you guys all for coming. It means a lot to us, and I'm really excited to see like what this talk brings. I might just go through the structure so that people that are watching can sort of realize what we're going to do. Because there's so many of us, we want to sort of give each person a chance to talk and like share their wisdom. So we're going to have 10 minutes of questions pre-prepared, and then I'm going to look at questions, and then the audience members can answer live questions, and then I'll go on to the next person. And then at the end, we'll have like 20 minutes or so where if you like hear any points that you want to bring up, then you can just say them again. And more questions can be answered then. So that's cool. Maybe if I can just tell the people that are watching like where this idea came from. It came from our community arts group. We sort of like were discussing how to release things, and obviously Bryony is in the industry, and she was like, she's got all these people, and we thought it'd be such a great opportunity if like we could have these people to actually tell us how it works. So we're hoping that you will give us like a sort of lowdown inside knowledge and everything. So that's exciting. That's basically it. So do you want me to say the structure again, or shall we just start with the questions? How's everyone feeling?
Ready? Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Cool. So we're going to start with Bryony. If you could just introduce yourself, Bryony, tell us a bit about yourself.
Cool. So I am Bryony Jarman-Pinto. I work for BlueJam, but I am also a singer and a performer and musician and all those things that go along with that. I'm signed to True Thoughts, and I have been for quite a while now, but last year I released my first album, and I currently have a few new singles coming out for another EP, which will be released by the end of the year. So yeah, there's lots of things going on, all to do with releasing your own music. Luckily, I've got an amazing record company behind me helping me do that. But also I do have other tips and hints and things like that I can share. I actually have like a 30-second clip of some of my music from my first album, which I'm going to play for you now.
Or could it be another time with everything on our minds? But all I really want to do, to lie in the sun with you. Yeah, all I really want to do, to lie in the sun with you. It could feel so good.
One of the really like popular fun songs that people really love, so I thought I'd share that one with you.
I love that song. It's so great, and it just gives something. Okay. So the first question is just a bit of background about yourself and how you got into music. Maybe you could share your story.
Yeah, so music is something that has always been with me. I grew up in a very musical family, and I did a lot of music outside of school, but I actually went off to study painting and art. And I got back into music in my early 20s when a friend sort of encouraged me to sing on a few of his songs. He's called Worker, and he was doing the webinar the week earlier. And yeah, and now I've sort of taken it on as my career and my career path, and I'm really, really pleased and happy that I decided to do that.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm just amazed by what you've managed to create. So maybe we could start with the very basic question, like, how do you promote yourself?
Okay.
Very obvious, I know.
It's a good question because it's actually really hard. It's different for everybody. And one of the things I've really struggled with is actually promoting myself, as in like using social medias and like talking to people and being like, oh, I'm a singer. It's really hard. Surprise. It took me about 2 years of performing to actually be like, I'm a singer. This is what I do. So if in one essence, you sort of have to train yourself to trust that you are doing the right thing and that, you know, people will believe you. And then the other thing is to really push yourself, really try and do those things that, you know, you don't maybe think it's necessary. It probably is necessary, you know, like that thing of like posting every day. Yeah, it's probably a really good idea. Other people aren't going to find it boring. Somebody's always going to notice it and then think, oh, maybe I'll go listen to that music. I don't do it myself enough, but I'm sure everybody here will say it's really important. And then obviously just talk to everybody. Whenever you meet a musician, find out who they are, find out what they do, that sort of thing. Tell them what you do.
Cool. I guess that kind of rolls on to our next question about sort of posting and social media and mental health surrounding that. Like, how do you keep yourself sane? Like, how do you stop maybe being anxious over a post?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I probably take about half an hour to write a 1-line post and then another half an hour to actually post it. Or I'll ask somebody else, could you just do this for me? And I'll be like, no, you need to do it. So it's a really difficult thing to get over, specifically if you're not used to doing that sort of thing. If it's not something you do for your personal life, it can be just as hard to do it for your professional. But I think I found it quite useful being able to really make that division, you know, have a professional profile and platform which is only professional. Yes, obviously share things that you want to share with people who will be your fans, but you know, treat that as something that you can sort of, it feels easier to get away with, you know, because you're like, that's my professional self. And then all the anxieties and all the or in the park, you know, that can all go with the other, with the personal side. But yeah, I think it's really important to try and separate that personal and professional, and that can really help you sort of deal with the anxieties. For me, they're there, and I'm sure for lots of people they're there, but yeah, there are ways around it.
It's just quite nice to like hear that you like kind of sometimes struggle with it, but then you like get over it and you face it. So that's kind of nice, I think, definitely.
Yeah, I had a friend actually, like another musician, who I was saying this to them, and they post all the time, and they put like these long paragraph posts, and I'm like, how do you do that? She actually just said, you know, I've stopped caring. This is what I feel, and this is what I want to say, and most of the time I get positivity back, so I just do it now. And that, yeah, I'm not quite there, but I'm close because of what she said. So I do think having those conversations are great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the posting, I think the more you do it, maybe the less it, like, you just sort of get over that. Well, you learn to manage the feelings, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, the next question is kind of, I guess, because we're all ladies here, and I don't know, it's about male dominance. And do you think that is still an issue, or do you think you can see a change? And
like, it honestly, I don't know. I've not been doing this for very long. I think it's the people who've been in this career for like 10 years and 20 years who will really see a change. For me, all I know is what I have experienced, and you know, and sort of build off that. So, you know, I'm sure there is an answer of yes or no or a bit, or, you know, it's getting there. I'd say it's probably getting there. Because, like, you know, I'm aware it's probably not just the music industry. I think it's still sort of anything you walk into as a professional, you still feel like, or I still feel like there's a part of me that needs to fight or push or just just be aware of the fact that people might not be listening to me, not just because they think I'm no good, but might be not listening to me just because I'm a woman. That is possible, you know. So sometimes you do have to be like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't, you know, accept that.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting to hear, like, I guess the not being able to see the change and whether there is something there. I don't think I would be able to say if there was something there or not. So yeah, I hope people have been asking questions, because I think we like have gone through all the questions. There's questions here about it being legal to take a well-known tune and put one into one's own words. Is that legal?
So that's all to do with copyright, which is like a really, really tricky thing to deal with, isn't it? Because there's the idea behind the melody, and then if you're changing the lyrics, there is still that melody. And it's something quite interesting. This Martha, I reckon, is the person to really ask about that. But my sister, who's also a composer, she takes poetry and uses the poetry and puts it to music and creates these phenomenal pieces, and within that she is always contacting the poet and making sure that the consent is there, you know, and therefore that copyright is agreed upon within the song. Like, there is acknowledgement of the fact that actually those lyrics aren't hers. And I think it's probably quite similar, but once again, definitely I feel like Martha might be the one to answer that question, or even Marina.
Can you clarify, maybe, Martha?
I'll mute myself. Yeah, so it's kind of a case by case thing. So was the question, sorry, the question was about
is it legal to take a well-known tune and put it onto one's own words? So just put your own lyrics over the tune.
I think it comes into, and I'm not 100% on this, but it comes into the publishing of the track. Yeah, as Bryony says, it's all to do with the copyright. So you can still have recording rights for the track, but you might not get the publishing. And then to kind of do it respectfully, I guess, you know, you want to be contacting someone to make sure you can use their song. And also, I guess, if you're using the melody of a track and then putting your own words on top of it, then it becomes more about sampling the track, which is then more problematic because you want to have the rights to be able to sample it. So it's kind of, when it comes down to using other people's music, the best thing in any scenario is to ask for whoever's music you're using. You know, we get it a lot that people want to remix tracks from True Thoughts, and sometimes the artist will approve of those remixes and sometimes they won't want them out there. And then at the same time, we work with Hot 8 Brass Band, who one of their sort of most well-known traits is reworking very well-known songs. So they did a version of, their version of Sexual Healing is quite well known, and then they did one of Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart last year, towards the end of 2018. And as far as I know, I'm not sure if Peter Hook has heard it or is a fan, but yeah, with that, it's just the publishing stays with the original publishers, so they only get recording. And then I'll talk about this when it's my turn to talk, but yeah, that's something we do in-house. We have someone who has the contact with whichever label holds the original publishing rights, and yeah, gets that signed off. So yeah, it's kind of, I guess it depends on what level you're using it at, but ask, I would say.
Yeah, there's a few more questions. That's cleared up a lot. There's a few more questions on this by the same person, but maybe we'll just wait to ask another one of them till when you're there. I can't actually see any questions. Yeah, another legal question. To Bryony, how have you found working with a label?
Well, I think it's one of those things where I came into it through collaboration. So I was working with Worker and he was signed to True Thoughts. So then I came in as a collaborator and they talked to me through that and then were like, oh, would you like to sign? So I didn't actually hunt them out. I was quite lucky and got offered this, for me, amazing deal, which has worked out massively in my favor. And I would say that's because I was coming from a situation where I wasn't sure if this is what I wanted to do professionally. You know, obviously I love music and I loved writing music, but I was going down the career of I was going to be a textile costume designer. That was my plan. So for me, having the support of a label who firstly weren't actually particularly pushy, you know, they gave me loads of time to the point where it took 4 years to deliver the album. But it meant that when it actually came down to releasing the album and all of that stuff just before, I had a very, very good and very useful support system there, which meant that the album and the singles reached much wider group of people that I could have ever really done by myself. But that's once again because I was coming from a situation which was very limited. Whereas for some people, they might be coming for a situation where they can actually gain those contacts themselves. And so I think when you're thinking about labels, you know, really think about what it is a label can do for you. I think there's loads, you know, lots of people might say, oh, maybe it's not necessary anymore. I think if you find yourself a great label who's really in your corner and is really supportive of your music, then it's definitely worth considering. But it's not the only way, by no means. You know, my experience has been actually very good.
Yeah, cool. It's nice to think of that kind of support system.
Oh, yeah, it's really been great. And I'm not just saying that because Martha's over there.
She is brilliant.
I was, yeah.
Cool. Right. Shall we go on to the next person on that lovely note? So for the next person, maybe we can go to Marina, and maybe you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you're about.
Sure. Hi, my name's Marina, and I'm just getting used to kind of talking into a camera instead of looking at the screen. So I'm freelance. I'm based in London. I work in kind of creative production, whether it's live shows, programming, festivals, radio, and also artist management. I freelance for Brownswood Recordings and Worldwide FM, and also people like the British Council. What else? I've got a radio show on Worldwide FM, which is monthly, and I curate a series of shows for Nettle Radio, which is a local station in London. Yeah, I think that's it at the moment.
Well, that sounded like quite a lot of stuff. So just to for a basic thing, because of where we're coming from for young people to get an introduction, maybe you could just talk about your management role, what a manager does, how they
yeah, I think that's a really good question, because actually I have definitely learned on the job. So a manager is, they provide a lot of support for the artist, but they also kind of provide protection for the artist. So they make sure that legally and professionally things are done well and properly. So whether that's a label contract, publishing deal, if they're sampling music, for instance, all of that back end stuff is a manager's responsibility to keep it kind of perfect. And then they're kind of public facing communicator. So often a manager will meet people and kind of be around and have meetings and stuff on behalf of an artist. So when you're choosing a manager, you need to really think about who you want to represent you physically, as well as just having the professional kind of angle on emails and stuff. It needs to be, especially now, it's quite important, I think, to channel yourself, channel your brand and identity through your management as much as through your socials and stuff. Yeah, and I think, no, go on.
You're talking about like choosing a manager, like how would someone like choose a manager? Would they do like play gigs or like?
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's no one way, because there's not like a little group of managers that you just come to. But I guess me and Bryony have spoken about this before. I think it's a lot about who's there, who's around, who's interested in your music, and maybe who's offered to support you or help you get some radio play, or kind of reached out and been like, how have you sorted out your PRS? Like, I can sort that out for you. And that's licensing, which is really complicated. And I think that it usually happens in quite an organic way. I mean, obviously there's sorry, my screen's quite funny. Obviously there's what do you call it, like big management companies, and so often they kind of headhunt talent, but that's usually deep into their career. So I think initially, like if you're an artist and you're playing a gig and there was someone that always came to your gig and like posted about you on social media and maybe worked in a label or in some sort of music related job, then even that they could be a kind of acting manager, especially for the beginning, because often you don't need all that like label stuff until way down the line. So it's kind of about having a bit of a champion around you as well.
Just to be like, this person is great.
Yeah, like a cheerleader.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's a nice metaphor for it.
Yeah.
So what tips can you give for maybe self-management at like the start of a career?
Yeah, I think like the artists I know that have done this really well are just really meticulous and organized, and I think that is actually quite difficult for a lot of creative people to manage, like being creatively productive as well as like doing admin. Like that's a bit of a like conflict. But just keep a list and keep a spreadsheet of like who you're making music with, any songs you feature on, gigs you've played and how much money you pay. Like just recording those kind of things can be really helpful a bit later down the line. And I think also if you've got a band, it depends what kind of person you are. Like if you can handle having a WhatsApp group and, you know, putting in a schedule and that comes naturally to you, then do it. But if not, definitely outsource like a kind of tour manager friend of yours that's like really into spreadsheets to get that sorted for you, because I think it can just push you forward much quicker if you have those that kind of organization like to kick off. But I think equally like self-managing, I'm just thinking, you know, there's loads of brilliant artists that didn't get a manager until kind of 5 years in, and like that's because they just had the absolute drive within themselves and they were reacting to what was going on. So I don't think there's one way of doing it, but I find keeping a list every day keeps me going through the day. So I'm sure that's a self-management tip for myself, isn't it? So like I guess that might work for artists too.
Yeah, I like the idea of like the organic, like letting it happen and just doing your music and like working off that sort of inspiration. I think that sounds like keeping it like it's all about that balance, isn't it? Like that stringent, like walking that line between going too far off one way and then too far off the other way. So the next tip, how can someone use social media effectively to promote themselves?
Yeah, I think like now it's like what Bryony was saying, you have to remember that for you it feels like a lot to put yourself out there and to put yourself out there every day, but that's because it's within yourself, whereas in a feed of stuff it's going to get lost anyway for most people, and then for some people they'll notice it, right? So that's what you have to remember, is that like it might seem like all your other artist mates are always posting about theirs, so why do you want to just join the kind of crew? But if you imagine a fan or a music like fan who just follows you, they want to see what you're up to, so they will have a whole different perspective on when you post something. So I think that like don't feel bad or get worried about actually posting. Like that's just like Instagram doesn't need any more of your energy for free, so don't give it that energy, just use it like to your advantage. And I think it's really hard to say, but just try and be as true to, like, don't write something that you wouldn't say in real life, because people will see through it and they'll stop engaging, and it's the people that actually have kind of stayed true to themselves. And if that's like Bryony, which we've talked about this, like she doesn't post as much as others, but that's because that's who she is, and she doesn't need to become this like lifestyle guru every day on Instagram because it's not her thing. So that's like appropriate for her, you know, like if everyone did the same social media posting, it'd be so boring. So I think that that's really key, is to think, actually, this is like a tiny fraction of myself represented in this way. Would I actually, you know, go and show my friends this photo, or on the weekend share that idea with someone? And if you wouldn't, just definitely don't bother. Cool. But if you would, definitely do it. Yeah.
So it's almost like pretending everyone on social media is like your best friend.
Yeah.
Of your
yeah.
friends that you like.
And I had some good advice once, that you should always treat it like you're talking to your mate. So like, if you're trying to sell your single, don't be like, you know, flashing like advert lights. I mean, unless that's your thing, but it's not my thing. But do just be like, hello everyone, like, I've got a new single out, I'd love it if you supported it. I mean, no one's gonna diss you for saying that. That is the basic like intention there. And I think just being, if you can't be like clever and stylish, just be really basic and straightforward.
Cool. I just wonder, like, do they like, is it just sometimes you just sort of feel like you're just posting and I don't know, and people wouldn't really care?
Yeah, I mean, usually though, as an artist, which is like what Bryony said, you know, you'll get some feedback, even if it's your first EP and you get one person like commenting you. Like when I started radio, I had one woman that would message me after my show and be like, this is great. And it literally kept me going for like all those radio shows. And I think that you have to be grateful, actually, which is such an overused word. But like, you actually, if you're really in it for a good reason, then you'll be happy that one person or that 5 people liked it. And that should, like, also, that's not the point why you're doing it anyway. It's not for Instagram.
Yeah. Great. I feel like that was really good. So you obviously network and you have like loads of webs of things that you do. Do you have any tips for networking and getting your music out there, particularly?
Yeah, I think it's, particularly if you're outside the city. Yeah, I think it's really hard. I think like there's a brilliant organization called Future Bubblers, which I'd recommend everyone go and have a look at the website, because there's tips and events, and well, not really events at the moment, but there's like, they're brilliant on Instagram, and they're always flagging funding and kind of networking events. They're run by Amy Frencham and Selassie Tevi, and it's like a artist development thing, particularly for artists outside of London. So I definitely check that out. It's called Future Bubblers.
Cool, I'll write it down.
Yeah, that's a really like, that's a kind of like tactical thing to do, I think, if you're based out of London. And then in terms of networking, I mean, in normal life, go to anything you can get to that's free, or like just that you only need to jump on a bus for, or like stuff like that. But I think because we have the internet, I mean, this is a good example, like there is a lot of free panels and talks, and following people like Future Bubblers and the kind of targeted young emerging artist groups, they should be providing those resources, which I think can be really useful if you're not in London, because I appreciate that, like, you know, it's really easy to say that loads of stuff happens in London, but if you're not here, it's much more difficult. And then I think on social media, just getting in touch with people, whether it's commenting them or like Insta messaging them, and just remember that, assuming you're trying to get in touch with like quite a good, well-meaning person, they're in it for that reason too. They're not going to hate you for messaging them, asking them for help or support or advice about something. And you know, unless they're huge, like probably Beyonce won't write back to you, but like other people would probably message you back, or at least put you in a direction that would be helpful. And I think that networking, it is helpful, and it doesn't come naturally to everyone. And you know, you shouldn't, as an artist, it's very different. Like, it's very easy for me to sit here and talk a lot because that's actually my job, whereas an artist, like, it's not your job to be able to communicate or to like verbally organize shit and sort it out. Sorry. And I think that you, as an artist, you just have to have, I've always admired them because they have mad faith in their own craft. So like this networking thing, like, again, you're not doing it for Instagram, you're not doing it for the networking. So like you can be a bit tactical by actually following people like Future Bubblers, because they do the work for you and flag you where you should be looking. But but don't get too bogged down in kind of thinking, oh, I haven't got a new follower this week. Just keep, if you keep on the music and it's good, then you'll probably get somewhere. But if you get distracted by networking, I don't think it's the right job for you in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds that thing about why you're doing it, like you're doing it for the love of it, you're doing it for the craft, and like you're doing it to share that. So yeah, that was really, I think if I heard that, I would be very excited. So we've got some questions from the audience. Amanda, Naomi's question is, how can you publish music independently?
Do you mean what, publish it as in like release music?
Yeah, just like basic tips.
So there's like, Martha will also know some of these, but Ditto off the top of my head is like a DSP, a digital service provider kind of avenue. So you pay them, I think, 10% of the streaming revenue, or you pay them a one-off fee of £10. It's not, I'm not sure, you'd have to Google it, but you basically pay them and then you fill out a form about all the information about the music, you upload the tracks, make sure they're like as good quality as you can manage at the time, and then they'll get them listed and what's called uploaded to iTunes and Apple, Spotify and all of those guys. And I think there's also one called TuneCore that does it for really cheap. So yeah, you can release your music through that way. And there's also like the idea of having a distribution deal, which means you don't have to go through a label at all. So if you and your friends, or you want to set up your own kind of imprint, which is another word for a label basically, you could try and get a distribution deal. But usually that would follow
what is a distribution deal?
A bit later on in your career when you've already released some music. So distribution deal, if you imagine like when you're in a restaurant, right, and you've got a takeaway, and the takeaway person comes and picks up the noodles, and then they take it and give it to the person that's paid for it. So the distributor, they also do other things often, like a bit of creative direction and a bit of help, but really they're that middle person. Martha, I don't know if you think that's right, but yeah, they're like that middle person between you. So you have your music, then you've got the distribution people, and then you've got the fans that will listen. So the distribution people will make sure that it's serviced, which is another kind of lingo word, but it's basically gets serviced across all the digital platforms. And they might help with a bit of press as well, because if they have a kind of reputation, then they will help you get some fans as well. But it depends who it is.
And is it that kind of a tips for a press release? That was just Amanda's question, and then we should move on.
Tips for a press release? I was actually writing one today, and I think I Googled that. But yeah, basically, apparently you should do kind of background stuff at the end. So like the long bio stuff, and then just Martha should be answering this actually. Always sending excellent press releases. And then the top bit is like why it's interesting and why you should listen to it right now. And then like the middle bit is something else, and let Martha do that.
Okay, I'll come back to Martha on that one. So shall we move on to Jemma now? Do you want to just give yourself, thank you for that as well, I thought that was great. Do you just want to give us a bit of introduction, like about yourself and
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jemma Freese. I'm a musician, composer. I play keyboards and vocals. I'm involved in quite a lot of different projects that also have gone like really different paths, and like have gotten where they are today because of totally different reasons. So I feel like I've got like lots of experience in loads of different ways that things can go wrong or right. So I'm involved with so I've got my own trio called Freeze Trio, which is trip hop, grunge, jazz. I'm involved with an all-female avant-garde jazz punk band called J Frisco. I'm involved in a Scandi pop band called Dommy. I'm involved in Maximo Park, which are like indie rock. I've just started some drum and bass with my friend, and then I've also doing my own solo stuff, which is just me and no one else. And I'm doing like I'm just started rapping, which like I've had no experience with, no one's taught me, but I just really want to do it. So that's like rap, maybe a bit of trip hop, because I love trip hop. So yeah, so that's everything that I'm doing. I'm also do like random collaborations as well. But we're actually going to play a 30-second clip of a Freeze trio song called Black Gravity.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, so that's called Black Gravity, and it's from our latest album called The Beast in the Blueprint.
Cool. Well, I want to hear the rest of the album now, so
Yay!
gonna go check it out. A few questions. How did you first get your music heard?
So I studied like BTEC music from 16 to 18, and I started doing writing my own songs at that point, and just did like loads of open mic nights. I don't have a musical family. There was just like a piano in our house that the old owners didn't like bother to get rid of. But yeah, so that's how I kind of got started, and I just went to loads of open mic nights, and I just started meeting people. So the people like a lot older than me, because I was like 16, 17, and I was playing in bars, and there was people so much older than me that they would like want to give me advice and want to help me and stuff like that. And then it kind of grew from there, and I ended up studying music.
Cool. So it's just all about getting into like those local scenes and like hearing all those different people, and yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think what, you know, everyone's been talking about today is like playing to your own strengths. And I think like I just love playing with like as many people as possible. So when anyone was ever like, oh yeah, maybe we should jam, like they were just saying it as like a nice thing to say. I'd be like, okay, yeah, let's do it tomorrow. And they'd be like, oh, all right. So I was always like taking up whenever anyone said anything, like even if they didn't really mean it, I was like, okay. So that's like, again, like that's like playing to my own strengths.
Yeah, so just doing what you love and then seeing where it goes almost.
Yeah.
Are there any things that you wish you know at the start? You were talking about all these different routes that you're going down, and
I guess like maybe there's some things that like I did maybe because I thought other people would like me better for. I've had like a lot of problems with like anxieties and insecurities. So I've always made music that's like from me, but I think like in terms of social media, posting it or talking about it, like Bryony said, like, you know, she found it hard to say I'm a singer. I really struggled with that as well, and I still struggle with it. It's kind of like imposter syndrome, if anyone knows what that is. So yeah, it's that kind of thing where I've just been like, oh, I'm not good enough. But then I always had that thing, like I said, where I would take up on people's offers because I was always like, oh, why not? So I think what I would say to myself younger was like, oh, just do what you want, believe in yourself. Just because you're young, you know, 16 or 17, or just because you're a woman, or doesn't mean that you shouldn't be taken seriously.
right, just having that belief in what you're doing. I think that's
and there's a lot of ageism, I think, especially when you're starting young. Like people think like, oh, I'm older, so I can give you all the advice, or I know everything. Where it's like, no, you people have got loads. They've got fresh ideas. Like they know what's actually going on in like pop culture and everything. So
yeah, cool. So you obviously are in a million bands, and how do you connect with like all these other musicians, like when you're talking to people? And
so it's like a process. So I guess like the thing that I said before about like
open
mic nights. Yeah, and then from that I studied. So like studying music, obviously you're then like in a class of loads of musicians, you know, there's teachers, and then the older you get, the more those teachers become more like people that you can work with rather than teachers, if that makes sense. And then obviously from studying, I started doing loads of gigs, collaborate with everyone on the course, blah, blah, blah. So again, it was like through collaboration. And then, because at college where I studied Leeds College of Music, you had to do like performance exams, and I just did loads of extra ones. I did 2 like uni degrees at the same time, which I wasn't supposed to do. So I did that as well.
How?
I was just like, I was like, I really want to go to that class and that class. I was like, I wonder what happens if I just go. So then I just went, and then they started being like, oh no, Jemma, you can't come to this lesson. And I was like, I'm going. So then, so I guess like, I think what we said before about like really like being passionate, and like you have to be your own driving force. No one's going to push you and say, oh, you got to do this or you got to do that.
Yeah, cool. You're just sort of going on what you really love to doing. And like the last question that we've got like written down is like, how have you applied to competitions and grants to progress your career? Because we know you've done that.
Yeah, so I've done actually quite a lot. So I'm based in the north, Leeds. So there's really good northern ones. So there's like for jazz, there's Jazz Northern Line, Jazz North, Manchester Jazz Festival Hot House Scheme. There's also Brighter Sounds, which is not just jazz. What else is there? Yeah, there's quite a lot, and they always like post about other people as well, and post about other organizations.
Cool. So were you sort of saying that like, did you really value the Leeds education? Like, would you say that's a really valid route to go down, that university education that you did?
I guess it gave me the opportunity to network. Like I didn't have to like go somewhere to network. I was just already in that environment. But like through these things that I've applied to, you know, you either get like support or you get a grant of money, or even if you don't get something from something straight away, like it can come down like further down in the line. Like there's a drum and bass song that's just been released on EMI, and that came from being a part of Brighter Sounds residency. So yeah, things can happen like a few years when past you already having that experience, if that makes sense.
Cool. We have one question coming in from somebody else. That is, do you duplicate your content on your social medias to promote other things you do?
Oh, as in like, oh, right, I see what you mean. Yeah, so I post on my personal one, and then obviously I'll post on the band's one as well. So yeah, it might be the same. If it's like a picture I'm sharing or a video, then yeah, definitely, because there'll be different people seeing it. On my personal, it'll be like all my friends, and on the band's pages, it's like the audience. But I'd never say the same thing, obviously. I definitely don't say the same thing. Otherwise, people can see it, because they'll scroll through, and then they'll see like 2 posts exactly the same. They'll be like, oh, they might think of it as lazy. But that's just my opinion.
Cool. So it definitely helps you to have the two ones, just to make that difference.
Yeah.
For you. And another question is like, have you self-released, and what kind of route you took, and what you went with that?
Yeah. So again, like I said, so one of the bands, Maximo Park, is obviously on a label. EMI, which I'm now doing a drum and bass track with, that's the label. But I also do self-releasing with the other 2 of the bands that I've mentioned, and used what Marina was talking about. I used actually TuneCore. Which is really, really easy to use, and obviously you have the freedom to just like post when you want, and you know exactly what you're doing with it as well. I've done 2 albums with Freeze Show, and we're just about doing 2 albums with Jay Frisco, self-released. Cool.
Did you find that what was the difference between doing it self-release and like with a record label?
Like I said, so you have like more control. You can see all the things that are happening, rather than like it just suddenly being released and you're like, oh yeah, I don't know, like, you know, all the movements that are going between it, or you're doing like the artwork, you're doing like emails, you're doing admin, so you're much more involved. It's a lot harder work, but then you can do it at any time in your career. You can do it at if you don't have a label behind you, you can just release anything. You can just release whatever you want.
Did you find it hard to get people to hear it if it was self-released, or did you sort of it sort of came from?
I think with the two bands, one was a lot harder than the other. So with my band Freeze Trio, that was a lot harder. And I think because my other band, Jay Frisco, is like all female, and there was quite a lot of like hype about it and a lot of support because of it being all female. And that was like organic. You know, we weren't like, we are all female, love us. It's like, so again, like what also has been talked about is like organic. So there's a lot of like organic hype about that we weren't doing, we weren't even aware of. Whereas with Freeze Trio, because it's me and two other males, people weren't as like, it wasn't as like much organic hype in terms of the image, if that makes sense. It's more about the image, I guess.
So it's sort of an organic hype rather than you would go out and try and seek.
Yeah, that was the difference. So like it was really hard with Freeze Trio because the image of the band wasn't as striking as three women, and also because in my band, two of the guys are like not as like up for doing crazy photos, whereas in Jay Frisco we all love like doing like crazy faces or scary faces. Cool. Yeah, because that's what people see first, isn't it, before the music?
Yeah, I guess. Interesting. Great. Well, that's like, it's amazing to get to like hear you talk about the way you go out and do stuff. Did you sort of, the organic help, was that through live music or was that through like online?
For Jay Frisco, it was just like lots of online, lots of like supporters. Yeah, loads of people coming to gigs and this is like in the jazz scene. Just people being excited that there's something that's like three women. So whenever there's something like slightly different or people do get excited about it. Cool.
Great. So that was great. And I really enjoyed listening to what you were talking. So we should probably go on to the final person, Martha, and then we'll open to have like a little bit of discussion between the two, all of you. Not the two of you, there's not two people here. Great. So maybe you can just introduce yourself, Martha, and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Martha. I work for True Thoughts, which is the record label Bryony signed to. And I actually started at True Thoughts as a press and radio officer. So I primarily did sort of promotion bits and pieces. And then for a variety of different reasons, we've sort of reshaped the team. So I'm now one of two campaign managers, which basically means that when we sign a new act or schedule in a new release, either myself or my colleague takes on that artist and then kind of carries it through from signing to release pretty much, and everything that goes on in the middle of that. So that's what I do. I also have a radio show on 1BTN, which is the Brighton radio station, which I do every 2 weeks. And I do a bit of online music reviews, not of True Thought stuff, for a friend's blog called Laid Off NYC. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds great. What does a record label do? Just like, because we're doing this again, like what does a manager do? What does a record label do?
So I guess to be honest, for True Thoughts as an independent label, we kind of fall in between what Marina's already said about getting a manager and taking that step, and what Jemma was saying about working with EMI and kind of having that hands-off approach and things sort of happening behind the scenes. So for True Thoughts, we've been running 20 years and there's 10 of us in the team. And then within that, we do A&R, we do all the contracting of everything, we do publishing and licensing in-house, because to have it as sort of a one-stop shop helps for our artists to get syncs, so on like TV and film and adverts and stuff like that. We do manufacturing, so artwork, vinyl, CDs, distribution, which Marina very nicely explained with the takeaway analogy, which is pretty much like, if you think about all the ways you consume music, it's how it gets there. So we coordinate with our distributors, and then we, as well as digital distribution and physical distribution, we also do PR, which is where I come into play, and also social media. So we have someone running the True Thought socials, and then also helping our artists out with their socials. Yeah, so we kind of we try to be with our artists and quite involved with our artists throughout the whole process of releasing music. So that's from when we sign it to deciding track lists and singles and scheduling all of that in, putting together a timeline, writing the press releases, choosing focus tracks for DSPs.
What is a DSP?
A digital streaming platform. Sorry.
Okay.
It's really easy to fall into all this music lingo. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do.
Sounds like a lot.
It's
quite impressive.
Definitely keeps us busy.
So what online platforms would you suggest for self-releasing? You talk about like helping people with their media and stuff. How would you help them?
I suppose just in terms of, we've kind of covered the self-releasing in terms of distributing and getting it out there, but I guess, you know, utilizing Spotify for artists and the back end of the digital streaming platforms that are there, and taking in as much as you can, because there's a lot of data. You can access a lot of your own data, and you know, how much you use that is up to you, but yeah, we would very much recommend using that as much as possible. Also things like, just from a sort of promotion point of view, BBC introducing is great, particularly if you're not based in London. So BBC introducing London, as you'd expect, they get a lot of entries because there's a lot of musicians there, and in certain parts of the country, you know, you'll get more than others. But you know, BBC introducing Cumbria, for instance, has been a fantastic champion of Bryony's stuff, and it's a good way. So it's a really simple upload, and then that gets to the DJs in your local area, and also the DJs at a national level that might be up for playing your stuff based on the genre, which is just yeah, it's quite a nice way to navigate into that world. And they also run BBC Introducing Live, which in normal life, where conferences happen, taking place in Tobacco Docks for the past couple of years, and I think tickets are normally only about a tenner.
Where is Tobacco Docks?
In London, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, which that's the only downside to it, but it's a good place to network and meet people. But yeah, BBC Introducing is the other one that hasn't been mentioned in terms of self-releasing and getting stuff out there.
Yeah, that sounds like a good top tip. It's like these things that you just don't think about, and maybe for people that you like, it's just really obvious, but like, it's good to know. Tips for creating a release schedule.
I've started to write this down, because I was like, oh god, when I create a release schedule, it's normally just me making lists and then realizing more bits need to go in. And yeah, in terms of creating a release schedule, I think planning's key, and I think this is where what Marina was saying about, if you're the sort of person who's inclined to be able to organize and plan, then it's well within your capabilities to be doing that, and if you're struggling, then that's definitely a time to look into a management or a label or someone to just come in and help out a little bit. But I think with a release schedule, the first step I would say is to make sure you've got all of your assets together, so everything you need for your release. Obviously that's the music, in as good a quality as you can get it, the artwork for it, and any sort of press photos that you want to put out there. You know, if a blog writes about you, what photo do you want them to be sharing? And then the press release as well, which I guess is a good time to answer the earlier question about press releases, which just really need to, I would say when I'm writing one, I just try and show some depth to the release. There are some blogs and there are some DJs out there that tend to just like regurgitate the press release. So whatever you're writing, if you make it really easy for someone to do that, then it might be that they're more likely to write about it or share it or whatever. And yeah, incorporate some background about yourself and any supporters who've said nice things about you in the past. So yeah, in terms of getting everything together and things like, you know, make when you're planning on sending files, make them accessible. You know, use a Dropbox link or use a private SoundCloud link. Just think about, like, if you're getting your music out to someone, you want to make it the easiest thing possible for them to listen to it and share it or play it or whatever it is you want them to be doing with it. And then the other thing in terms of release schedules, I'd say, is planning, which I would like, as in timing wise. I realised that planning is the whole thing of a release. but I think in terms of so streaming platforms, if you get music to them sort of 3 weeks in advance for a single of release, then it has more time to be considered for playlisting. If you've put an album out and you want like print magazines to review it, those magazines go to print 3 months in advance. If you want someone to have an exclusive first play or to premiere your video, it might be that you have to chase them for a month before that person picks up your email or agrees to the premiere. So yeah, those are my sort of two top tips to get everything together and to make sure you leave yourself enough time. Like, I know I've spoken to people where they're self-releasing and they just want to be able to get it out now, like they've got everything together. But sometimes you're doing your music a disservice not to plan it out and time it out as best as possible.
Yeah. So, like, is there a certain point in the year that it's good to do it, or you just sort of look at the magazines that you want and then time it along then? Or...
I think, I mean, again, this year's an anomaly of in terms of releasing stuff. I think on a normal year, if it sounds like a really strange thing to say, but imagine what the music industry is doing and then think about your timing. So festival season's an obvious one. If something drops in festival season, if something's released in the middle of Glastonbury weekend, you know, people might not be around to pick up on it. Christmas as well, you know, we shut the True Thoughts office for 3 weeks over Christmas because there's such a lull, and it's a very nice perk of working for True Thoughts. But yeah, so in terms of when you put it out there, you know, even things like, it sounds really silly, but public holidays and stuff like that. So I think getting your timings right just is about thinking about what the people behind you know, streaming platforms and blogs and magazines and radio shows will be doing, and then work backwards. So if you pick the second week in May for a release, make sure you give yourself a few weeks to pitch it out and a few weeks for it to reach the playlist curators at Spotify and that sort of thing.
So you send them directly to the playlist curators on Spotify, or do you sort of...
It's done through, this isn't my area of expertise, but I believe if you're doing it yourself, you can do it through Spotify for Artists. There are, if you scour Twitter and are a good sort of detective with this sort of thing, you can find some of the people that are behind the big playlist. But,
totally stalk them and then just send them a message privately.
To be honest, like,
Cool.
I wrote that down. That's my top tip for any sort of promotion, like shameless stalking, but in a really way.
Professional.
Yeah, professional stalking. Like Marina said about, you know, if you're the sort of person that talking comes naturally to you, and I very much like, I don't, it's sort of a chicken egg scenario with whether I started doing PR or I was always doing it a little bit in my personal life and now I do it as a job. But there's definitely that element of like sitting on Twitter and befriending people and then realizing like, oh, they've got a radio show, and if I, you know, engage with them while they're talking about sandwiches, then they might get to know me and notice me, and then I can send them my music. But again, it just depends on the sort of person you are and how much you're living on social media. But yeah, those email addresses and those contacts are out there. You just have to get a little bit clever with it.
Yeah, cool. I like this kind of organic way of like finding people and the things and like just going in like a random route. I think that's kind of cool. I like that idea and image. That right. So we've got a few questions from people. How do I need someone professional to design the artwork, or can I do it myself? What does it need to include? Like, what would, if you were designing your artwork, what would you sort of think about?
I mean, I think artwork is whatever you want it to be. If you're, particularly if you're self-releasing, you know, for us at the label, when there's certain things, so like a True Thoughts release will have a True Thoughts logo on it. It will have the catalogue number. If it's a physical, you know, it will have thanks and information about copyright and stuff on the back. If you're self-releasing and you're doing a digital single, just make sure it's something that is memorable and looks nice and is on brand for you. And you know, at the end of the day, it's the thing that people will hopefully be sharing. So yeah, just make sure it's something that you're proud of. And in that sense, like, I know that some people would rather have a striking image than their name and the title of the track on it, but from a sort of promotional convenience point of view, I think personally it makes sense to have those things. But yeah, as long as, you know, you're happy with it, then I think it doesn't, you don't always need a professional designer to do it.
It's like representing you and what you love and what you've created, and that's basically what it should be.
Yeah, and I think also as long as it's in keeping with the theme of a campaign, like if you're doing a few singles or an EP and there are videos to go with it, you know, make sure it all fits together. Like, it's very easy to just go through your favorite artists' releases and yeah, just see how they've done it. You know, you don't have to copy them, but just the themes that they've used, and make it your own.
Great. Well, I feel like I've learned a lot. I hope other people have learned stuff as well. I think like it would just be nice just at the end just to have maybe a conversation between all of you guys, and just see what you're all thinking about, what's come up, and if any thoughts have come up from what other people have been saying or whatever.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in with the artwork thing, because for the latest EP that I'm releasing, which is a live version of some of the songs from the album, I created the album artwork myself, which was it was quite fun, but also I had to think about like what size should it be and how do I actually turn these images digital. I ended up doing them as digital artwork, so you know, like using a program, which was a whole new learning curve anyway. But I had to figure out, like, you know, what are the sizes, and that's the sort of thing to pay attention to when you're creating the work. You know, if you do want it to be on a CD, if you're going to print your own CD, which can be quite useful, make sure that your artwork is going to look good printed physically, and know about like GRB, I think it's called, and like CMYK. I'm sure those letters are all in the wrong order, but like one's for print and one's for digital. And I got that wrong and realized that they are completely different colors almost when you print them to when they're digital. So know that, and know what you're working in if you're going to print it. So that's top tip from me.
Great tip.
That is a very good point. Making sure whatever your artwork is, making sure it's good enough quality for its purpose is probably more important than anything else.
But same with promo shots as well. Would you say, like with your headshots and stuff, a lot of the time they ask you to send something that's like quite like you know, it's got to be a certain quality for them to use it, especially if they're going to blow it up and put it as a banner or something. So you need to make sure that your images are of a good enough quality for festivals to use, or, you know, gig promoters to use. Otherwise, you know, then they're going to look awful, or they just won't use them.
Yeah, I definitely feel that as an architect. Like, I just, oh gosh, always. We had another question that coming from somewhere else, like, where do you see the music industry in 10 years? Like, do you have a vision, or is it just sort of this organic thing that is just gonna develop? That's quite a big question.
That's a massive question. I don't know anyone that would be like, right, yeah, I plan that answer. I think you know what, I think the whole COVID thing's going to have a big impact on the music industry. It's wiped out a whole year of touring. You know, it's put a lot of artists who are kind of emerging or on the tipping point, it's delayed them in a way. And so it's going to affect culture moving forward for like the next 5 years, because we're all absorbing music in a different way. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And I think that another really like probably over kind of said thing is that people are labels are having to adjust what they're offering, because people are able now to do it more independently. So there's an interesting shift for labels where they're kind of stepping up and, you know, really offering such high quality if they want to keep artists, like having a relationship with artists. And I think that people are also people that maybe don't have so much access to labels can actually get their music out independently in an even more high quality way. So it's kind of both sides seem to be improving. Like, it's not like people really jump on the like, oh, there's no need for labels anymore. And I think the clever ones, like Martha's been talking about, is that they move with this shift and then offer an even better service. So and then like for people, you know, out of a network or kind of feeling isolated in trying to get their music out, actually it's never been easier to release your music. Like Jemma was saying, you just sign up to whatever website. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic. That's my my 10 cents there.
I definitely agree with that. Like we have Nax that works with a major that gave them quite a bit of money but no support. So it was like, you know, here you go, now sort your distribution and your promo and and yeah, and they were kind of shocked by the difference in having us as a support network. And I wrote down the word cheerleader earlier when you said it, Marina, because I definitely think that's a huge part of it. Like, particularly if you're a solo artist, having a management team or having a label or having those people as part of your journey, without sounding too cringe, you want to know they've got your back, and kind of are there to like shepherd you through the experiences a little bit, because it can be quite daunting, particularly when you're starting out. You know, we definitely kind of step in for our artists in a management role where they're very, very new and very much starting out, and that's just something that as a label we've always done, but we're a small label, so we can do those things. So it'll be interesting to see what the bigger labels do as self-releasing becomes easier.
Definitely.
Like, I've just seen that someone's like asked a question about how to raise awareness of your music from scratch, and I was like, oh, God, that's a really difficult thing, because it's like, it's gonna take time, isn't it? It's, you know, it's, you're gonna feel like it's not getting anywhere, but like, you know, maybe, like, anyone got any ideas on the best way to, like, from that first step, what's that first step to be heard? My friend, you know, he just sent his CD to an artist that he really likes, and you know, and luckily that artist replied and said, yeah, this is great. So that was a really great step for him. What, you know, other people might do.
I guess, like, if you're like if you are gigging, so open mic nights, anyone can play, and obviously you can bring merch, or you can make, like, I make my own business cards, so you can put on, you know, where to find all your information, so to find your Facebook page, or if you have your own Facebook page, you can actually like other pages as your page. So for example, if your band is called, well, mine's like Jay Frisco, can like other pages, and then those pages will get a notification. So if you like, you could like venues, or you could like bands that are on the same starting level as you, and they might like you back, and then build it up like that. Same with Instagram as well. Yeah, or like you know, we'll talk about radio as well. So it's like there's lots of like smaller radio stations than like BBC. There's in Leeds, there's Kamar radio station that I can think of off the top of my head, but like smaller ones that would take artists that are more starting at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think also just to thank anyone and everyone on social media who does share your stuff. I know from friends who are musicians, you know, you see it when they share like a radio player or a blog's supported their music or something. For people who don't know what goes on behind the scenes, those things, no matter how small they are, it looks brilliant because someone who isn't your mum or whatever is supporting your music. And I think, and also the more you thank those people, the more people will be up for supporting you, because, you know, it's nice to be thanked for supporting a new artist. And so, yeah, and I think the more you start doing that as well, if that's on your socials as well as your, you know, personal posts and your interesting posts about your releases, then it sort of shows you as someone more serious, and almost becomes a bit of a like self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if you believe in yourself and behave in a way where it's like, I am getting reach, then you should, if the music's good, get a bigger reach.
Yeah, you just have to remember that everyone started at zero, or like most people started at zero. Yeah.
Another thing that I feel like we did talk about it a little bit, but not very much, like PRS is like really, and like PPL and stuff is really important to just go and read up on, especially if you're about to self-release something. Make sure you sign up for that, because, you know, that's something you can do yourself, and that's one way of making money through your music. Like when it gets played on the radio, when it gets played in a club, you know, when a club's got a license, that license money goes to you if you're on PRS. Because somebody's asked a question about CDs and how you actually make money from music. Royalties, you know, not maybe like massive at the beginning, but there's still something. And I guess the other thing for me is how I make my money through music is, you know, performance, which is why this year is disappointing. Yeah, performance and doing other jobs, you know.
Also, I mean, it's not always as guaranteed as other areas of the music industry, but in terms of making money and befriending people and being a bit clever about your stalking on social media, music supervisors for channels and films and TV shows, you know, they're the people who are going to be deciding who gets paid however many thousands of pounds to have 5 seconds of a track used on Match of the Day. So yeah, they're good people to kind of sound out, and if there are ever any panels on getting a better understanding of that side of things, yeah, it's always a good thing to do. I went to a panel last year about the music of Love Island, because it got to the point where like the songs they would play would get so many Shazams that these tracks would just become Spotify streaming sensations overnight, which is a sort of avenue that you don't really think of in terms of like things kicking off for you. But yeah.
Cool. I just, there's so much information like flowing around, like I'm just trying to take it all in, and what everyone else is saying is cool. There's a question about where you guys are posting your stuff. I think people are interested in finding out where like your artists, maybe just say your social media pages, I think.
As in which social media platforms we use, or what?
No, as in like who you are, and if they can find you later, to follow you later, I think.
Oh, okay.
Finding you is
oh, okay. So I think we'll be posting this on BlueJam, won't we?
Your
so
at.
mine's, yeah, so my I've got a few. So mine's Jemma, I've got Jemma Freese, which you can see there, and then Freese Trio, and then at J Frisco, and then at we are Dummy, and I have Instagram and Facebook, and I've just started like Twitter, but I prefer Instagram.
I don't have quite as many ats. So my main thing that I pay most attention to is Instagram, and that is at Bryony Jarman-Pinto, the full thing, no gaps, which is quite easy. But I also like, send stuff from that into Facebook and sometimes into Twitter when I remember to untick that. And my Twitter is Bryony JP, because it doesn't let you have something as long as my name. I also have a website, which is www.bryonyjarmanpinto, all one word, .com, which needs some upkeep. Yeah. Oh, and you can find me on Spotify as well.
Yes, Bryony, plug
into your stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Spotify, Bandcamp, you can buy it. And other places too.
Got a new single out tomorrow.
Yeah. There's a new single coming out tomorrow, which if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know more about it.
Very good. You can find me at Marina JGB on Instagram, and I'm Marina_JGB on Twitter.
And I'm Martha JSC on Twitter and Instagram, and True Thoughts is true_thoughts if you want to hear about Bryony's new music and our other artists as well.
This sounds like such a thing about True Thoughts. It's not.
It started with you and it ended with me, so it was just this true package. There are other labels. Self-releasing is good. I'm not just here to promote True Thoughts.
Great. Well, I think this is a great time to wrap up. But does anyone have anything that they want to say at the end?
I am, unless anybody else wants to say anything else, I just want to say that this webinar series that we have going on will be going on for a few weeks over July and into August. So this whole series is called How to ... Music, and we've got a whole load of things set up in the next few weeks. One is about paths into music, so whether you take education, whether you take the route of a college rather than a conservatoire, or if you try and go it alone and don't go down the formal education route, which will be happening next Wednesday. And then after that, we've got one about what it's like to be in a band. So touring, collaborating, working, and creating those bonds that, happen within a band setting. And that's with Ponyland, who are a, Penrith based, well, not anymore, but they were formed in Penrith and have been touring all over Leeds, and not Leeds, touring all over the north. There we go. So check that out. Stay tuned with BlueJam Arts to find all the other webinars happening.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.